Hello everybody, and welcome to the first ever episode of From the Desk of Jamison Greenwood, produced by NJB Enterprises and broadcasting from the Kactus radio down here in Phoenix, Arizona. We've got a great show planned for you guys. We'll have music, trivia, anecdotes, even a little poetry. You'll love it. At least we hope, but it will probably turn out to be just like the other late night shows, something that only insomniacs turn to who have exhausted all other options. Are you still awake, Ivan? Okay, good. So, I don't know what you all think, but this election is, it's looking just about as nasty as it always did, and... this didn't really make the news, but Donald Trump was asked at a rally recently if being from New York he had any ties to the Mafia, and he responded by saying, "Oh, I sure do, and if you help my Mafia buddies track down agents of ISIS, they're gonna take you out for an authentic spaghetti dinner that the Mexican government's gonna pay for, just like they're gonna pay for that wall on the border." So, and I looked up, Hillary Clinton, of course, denounced these remarks, but there is supposedly videotape evidence of both Clintons having dinner with Tony Soprano while the good fellows looked on from nearby. But I suppose that's enough of us wasting our time on the two of them, so let's go on to today's story. So I have to ask first, are any of you terrified of bees? I mean absolutely terrified to the point that you consider activities like hiking or visiting a botanical garden or the nursery at Home Depot or Lowe's to be too dangerous? Well, I'll admit that I used to be, and I still am a little bit, but not as bad as in the past, and I mean it's getting older, part of it, but another part of it is that I got over my fear when I heard this tale of how a bee infestation actually helped to calm what could easily have become a catastrophic situation. And it all happened in a small town right here in the Sonoran Desert. Now, to the north of the Phoenix metro area, or the valley as we locals call it, there is a small town of just under 2,000 people called Kactus, which is near Black Canyon City. That's their nearest major locality. Now, my knowledge of Kactus's history leaves a bit to be desired, but my assumption is that their founder was probably an ill-informed person from the Midwest or the Northeast who spoke not a word of Spanish, because for those of you who don't know, Kactus, translated into English, is actually Spanish for dirty house. And this locality, it's not that dirty, but anyway, they consisted of homes of its inhabitants which were a combination of 1920s bungalows, mid-century modern ranches, and of course some of the stucco tract homes with tile roofs that we have today. And these houses encircled a small town square with the typical small town establishments. There was a town hall, a library, and a diner/coffee shop. But the most famous establishment, and the one central to our story, was Uncle Buck's Saloon, which was on Taft Street, the main drag in Kactus. Now, despite its name, Main Street, this is an aside, but despite its name, Main Street was in fact a short residential street on the far edge of town, and I don't know why they called it that. But, anyway, Uncle Buck's Saloon was housed in an adobe-styled 3-story building, and it sure felt like the Old West, as its name suggests. A porch outside had railing all ready to tie up your horses, despite the fact that horse-drawn carriages have been illegal in Kactus since 1947. And then in the inside there was sawdust strewn about various parts of the floor to make it seem more like a cow barn, or a Bill Johnson's Big Apple, if you remember Bill Johnson's Big Apple. There were several of those. It was a cowboy-type restaurant here in Phoenix. And it was dimly lit by some simulated kerosene lamps hanging from the ceiling, and between them there were 5 black ceiling fans that were employed to keep the joint cool during the scorching desert summers. Guns, saddles, and posters of tough cowboy stars like John Wayne and Clint Eastwood lined the walls, along with more wholesome favorites like Roy Rogers and Gene Autry. The bar itself was made in mahogany in the turn-of-the-century Victorian style with brass accents, and an ornate mirrored shelving unit for all the booze was at the back. But there were a few anachronisms to its Western spirit. Neon signs advertised Coors, Budweiser, Miller, and even Falstaff beer, which surrounded the bar mirror, and then there were 2 plasma screen TVs that blared the latest ball games. While the greedy guys in the black played their games of pool and Texas Hold'em, the neon-lit jukebox in the back corner played songs by everyone from Johnny Cash to Roy Orbison. Now the bar was managed by Mr. Gordon O'Grady, a lifelong resident of Casasucia, who lived in a brick bungalow that had been in his family since his grandfather, Mr. Francis O'Grady, came to Arizona from Ireland by way of New York City, and then purchased the land and built that house with his own 2 hands. Now, when Francis O'Grady keeled over from heat stroke in 1968, his wife, Mrs. O'Grady, moved from the bungalow into a white mobile home with yellow trim that her son had purchased for her, and her son, whose name was John, worked as a ranch hand in Black Canyon City, and he moved into the brick bungalow with his pregnant wife. Now this, as you would expect, was the farmer's daughter, and that was a shotgun marriage. Now that baby was Gordon's brother Darrell, and the second was Gordon, who was born in 1969. Now, despite their working-class background, these boys grew up to be quite astute. Darrell developed intense interests in money and the way it could be spent to develop new businesses, and was the outgoing high school kid whom everybody knew and was president of the student council and nominated for prom king senior year. Now, in contrast, his brother Gordon was a shy boy, but no less precocious, always reading the finest literature the world over. He even read all of Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind in a single day while he was home with the flu. But despite his introverted nature, he could be very authoritative, and he had a much better ability to come out and say no to something than his brother did. The O'Grady brothers were also the first in their family to go to college. Darrell to the W.P. Carey School of Business at ASU, and Gordon to the University of Minnesota to study English literature, which he was probably already qualified to teach anyway. And they had a few problems after they left college. Darrell made the mistake of investing in one of Donald Trump's failed casinos, and Gordon quickly came to understand that a degree in English does not amount to well-paying jobs for most people. Therefore, they both returned to Casasucia to look for other opportunities. Darrell began buying and selling residential and commercial property throughout the town, becoming financially secure to the point that he was able to buy not only a small ranch for himself, but also Uncle Buck's saloon, which provided an extra avenue of secure income. Now, Gordon did not fare quite as well, but he eventually got a job as a security guard where I went to school at Estrella Valley in Avondale. Now, with his authoritative nature, he got to be so good at that job that he became the highest-paid security guard in the district. And that still didn't pay quite as much as he needed to keep food on the table and gas in his 15-year-old Toyota Camry, so his brother very generously offered him a job at the bar. Every morning, Gordon would get up at 5 a.m., drive his Toyota to the Happy Valley Park and Ride at I-17 and Happy Valley Road, take 2 buses to Estrella Valley, work there until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, take a reverse trip home, nap for 4 hours, work the bar from 8 to 1, go back home, and start the cycle over again at 5 the next morning. Now, I do not drink and thus seldom go into bars, but I did get to be very well acquainted with Mr. O'Grady when I was attending Estrella Valley High School. A lot of times I would hang around in the school library with Mrs. Kimball, and Mrs. Kimball and Gordon would watch the library and make sure that the kids didn't do anything bad. And when I would finish my peanut butter and orange marmalade sandwiches, I would always go up and talk with Mr. O'Grady about the latest books I was reading, and the lessons and laughs I got out of them. And at the same time, I always complained about how ridiculous the policies of the principal and the district administrators were, but all he said was that I should become a principal. Maybe I should do that instead of wasting your time telling these stupid stories. But anyway, during one of our informal sessions of conversation, I inquired to him about the life at the bar, and he relayed to me a story of the beehive and how he narrowly escaped getting stung by a bee who had come into the bar out of nowhere. And once he closed for the night, or the early morning, depending on how you look at it, he got a stepladder and crept up towards the tile in the ceiling, where he noticed a small hole, and near that small hole a small drop of golden liquid had settled. Honey, he thought. He called Darrell. As being the landlord, it was Darrell's responsibility to send out an exterminator, but when Darrell called Bunker Pest Control, they told him that they couldn't make it until the weekend, and it was a Monday by that point, so he would have to wait a while. So until the next weekend, Gordon carefully taped over the hole with some superglue-enhanced duct tape to prevent any more bees from getting in, and he didn't think about it at all for the next few nights, during which trouble began to brew faster than moonshine in a still. Now Gordon had many regulars at Uncle Buck's, but there were 3 in particular whom we'll discuss tonight. There were 2 guys, one named Tyler Bennett and the other named Jake Gibson. Now upon first hearing about them, one would think that they would get along well because they had so much in common. They had never known their fathers. They both worked hard labor jobs. Tyler was a farm hand and Jake worked underground fixing water mains. And at Uncle Buck's they loved drinking Coors and watching the Arizona Cardinals. So, what would cause bad weather between these guys, would you ask? Well, you'll never guess. Actually, you might already be able to guess. You know what, screw it. You probably figured all along that it was a girl. And this girl was... Wait, Ivan? It's already time for a commercial? Oh. Well, we're going to take a little break now, but when we come back, we'll have the second half of our story, our trivia quiz, and a whole lot more. You are listening to From the Desk of Jamison Greenwood on KCTS. Are you nervous about the rigor of working out? Do you want to avoid the burden of muscular tough guys harassing you? Then come on out to Straits, the exciting new circuit gym designed for guys just like you. For as little as $15 a month, you get access to the easiest exercise equipment in the world without the hassle of big guys with small self-esteems. Straits, a circuit gym for men. 7 valley-wide locations. Well, greetings, folks. This is your old pal Mark Twain here to tell you about the incredible value of Tom Sawyer decaffeinated coffee. The mild but rich coffee that tastes good and won't give you the gym jams. Or enough energy to get up in the morning. Tom Sawyer decaffeinated coffee. Available as ground, whole bean, and instant.